I'm super excited to have you all here. As we're waiting for folks to come in, please head into the chat. Let us know where you are tuning in from today. I love to always see who we've got coming in from where around the country. Sometimes we get international folks. So let us know what city you are tuning in from. And then we can just see our pan-Canadian reach today. We're so excited to have you here at the Gap Year event that we're running today, our wonderful Gap Year Expo. So let us know where you're tuning in from. There are, on the right-hand side, you will see a panel for chat. We're going to be inviting you guys to participate in that throughout the event today. So get familiar with that. Just going to make an announcement for everyone. Sessions are starting now. So we will get that announcement popped out to you guys. There you go. From Moncton, New Brunswick today. Wonderful. Good stuff. Oh, Maya, we don't need you in here. There we go. So super excited that you guys are here. We're going to jump into the contents to make sure that you guys have the information that you need. This session is all about planning your gap year. So we've got tons of information coming at you. Make sure you have your pen and paper out and ready to go, because there's going to be so many tips coming flying your way. And we've got a very short time together today, but really, really excited to make sure that you have the tools you need in order to plan your dream gap year. So let's jump right into it. We're going to go through rapid fire 4 secrets to planning your best possible gap year. So it's going to be, let me actually just tell you a little bit about. My name is Michelle Dittmer. I run the Canadian Gap Year Association. I'm here with my esteemed colleague, Jazz. The two of us are going to be facilitating all sorts of conversations for you today. As well, over in the side menu on the left-hand side, you're going to see the Expo tab. So we actually have a great opportunity for you to check out different gap year programs, entrepreneurship, stuff that's happening locally, international stuff. There's something there for everyone. So make sure you check the schedule, find the particular sessions that are of most interest to you. Come on out, come join us for these conversations. And then in between, you can head over to the Expo and check out some of those incredible organizations. There is something there for everyone. But anyways, that's me. That's what I look like before the pandemic. I was a little blurry back then, but I've kind of sharpened up a little bit, and just so passionate about gap years. And so the organization that you are attending on behalf of is the Canadian Gap Year Association. This is a national nonprofit. We serve families coast to coast to coast, and helping them decide if a gap year is the right thing for you. And if it is, how do you make that time purposeful? What types of activities do you plug in there? How do you build community? All of those important components of a gap year, we want to give you the confidence and the resources to make the most out of it. So we have wonderful things out there, like our podcast, like our YouTube channel, like events such as this, plus incredible downloads. You'll find all sorts of them, and we've got an incredible email coming to you after the event with lots of downloads that will get you headed in the right direction. So you are definitely here in the right place. Now, while I'm going through this, I'd love you to pop into the chat. Let me know if you are considering a gap year or if you're committed to a gap year. That also helps me make sure I'm giving you the right type of information in this. So just considering or committed, that would be really helpful for me as well. So we're here with you on every step of the journey. So let us know where in that journey you are at. My promise to you is over the next 24 minutes to give you as much information as I could possibly give you, and answer any questions that you have. So thanks for that, Mary. Got it. Karen, got it. Amazing. But what I need from you in order to do this is this engagement. We are now in year 2 of a pandemic, and these black screens are very lonely. So the more you interact, the more fun this will be for me and for you. And we've got your answers to your questions. So don't be afraid to put that in there. Thanks, Jessica. I see that too. So post your questions as we go, and I will be jumping in and out of the presentation to make sure you get the answers that you need. I also want you to be fully present while you're here. So these lovely little devices that hold everything for us, just put it aside for half an hour and be fully present with your pen and paper or whatever you need, because so much information is going to be coming at you full speed. I want you to catch it all. So please be fully present, and let's jump into this. So it is my fundamental belief that taking a gap year is the single best way to prepare yourself for this daunting real world that we hear is keep coming at us. But you'll notice that there's a subtext to that you need some sort of proper planning in order for that to happen, because the age-old risk or the age-old fear that we hear is that it's going to be wasted time. And so that is what we need this planning information for, because we want to make sure that that time is well spent. And that is what this presentation is all about. Like my friend Max here. So Max came to me a while back. He did his gap year 2019, 2020. So he just escaped the pandemic. But he did his gap year in order to just basically clarify what he wanted to do. So he had been accepted to McGill for film school, and he wanted to take some time and figure out the real world a little bit, make sure he was on the right path. And when Max came to me, he came from a family with a single mom, and didn't have a lot of money for his gap year and didn't really know what his own goals were. So we worked together and we found out that he wanted to get some experience on the ground. So Max worked his networks. We figured out how to make it happen, and he got a job on a TV show set for his gap year. So he spent the majority of his year working and gaining really valuable experience, but also making incredible networks of people who would be able to support him on his gap year. Later on in his gap year, he was able to actually produce his own documentary based on all the things he had learned in the first half. And as you can probably guess, this is not Max on a film set. This is Max actually doing a little bit of traveling on his year. So Max headed down to South America to have an incredible experience with an organization called Operation Groundswell, and made it happen. Now, Max didn't have a ton of funds available to him. And if this is you, or you want to talk budgeting, you got to come back to our budgeting session later on this afternoon. But Max and I actually worked together and found him a scholarship. It was a $5,000 scholarship that actually made this trip possible for him. So needless to say, Max went back to school, had a great experience, but just really, really flourished on his gap year. If you want to hear Max's story right out of his own mouth, we have a podcast episode with him. So you can head to the Gap Year podcast and just type in Max, and his episode will come up, and he talks about what it was like to go back to school after taking a gap year too. So if that's something that you're curious about, he has a great story to tell there. Now, here are the 4 things that we're going to go through. So if you have to duck out for whatever reason, please stay. But if you have to duck out, here are the 4 things. Number 1, goals are more important than Google. Hands down, this is the number 1 rule. If you're here from the game plan, if you're already part of our program, you hear me say this all the time. Number 2, finding gap years and opportunities isn't as hard as it sounds. And number 3, build systems to keep yourself on track. And 4, it's all about balance. So those are the 4 things that we are going to fly through. So secret number 1, here we go. Goals are more important than Google. Now, let me know in the chat if you have already jumped on Google and typed in gap year programs. Is that something you've already done? Because I would say about 80 to 90% of people have done that. Let me know in the chat if that's something you've done. Just a simple yes would work, because I think that's where we automatically go to when we think about it. Some people pop in and they say, oh, that's how I found you, which I think is great. But it's so important that when we put in gap year programs, Google's just telling us all these things that are out there. And I would tell you that probably about 90% of gap year experiences that you can have actually aren't searchable by the term gap year. because gap year is everything. It's working, it's volunteering, it's taking courses, it's having these incredible travel experiences, and they're not all necessarily labeled gap year. So knowing what your goals are, you can refine your searches in really, really meaningful ways. So if you know you are an artist and you want to stay in Canada and you want to I don't know, learn about Indigenous practices. Then when you jump into Google, you're not typing gap year. You're talking about maybe a residency in Canada for artists in Indigenous art, and maybe something out in BC will pop up for you. So knowing your goals will give you the power to find the right experiences for you. Now, when you're setting your goals, I want you to think about 3 separate categories for your goal setting. You want to have personal goals. So how do you as a person want to be different? What do you want to accomplish on your gap year? Maybe you want to be more confident, or maybe you want to be more independent. Maybe you want to have a clearer direction in your life, whatever that is. So you want to set a personal goal or some personal goals. You want to set something a little more strategic as well, or tactical. What are those things that you want to do for your future? Maybe there's a course you want to take, or maybe you want to get an internship or a volunteer placement in a particular industry. So what are those things that are a little bit more tactical, or things that you really want to achieve that are going to set you up for success in your future? And then the third category is fun, right? I think all of us, especially as this pandemic drags on, we've been lacking a lot of that excitement and fun, and the thing that lights a fire under us when we get up in the morning, that reason for being, the raison d'être, whatever it is that's going to get you excited. Maybe that is skydiving. Maybe that is traveling. Maybe that is learning a new language. Maybe that is knitting a sweater for your dog. Whatever that thing that might be fun is, that's going to give you some excitement and enjoyment, please don't overlook those goals. They are very, very, very important to your life and to your gap year specifically. So let's jump into secret number 2. This girl kind of looks like me a little bit here. But finding your gap year opportunities are not as hard as you think. And this relates directly back to what I was just saying, is once you have those goals defined, once you know what you want to be, how you want to be different at the end of your gap year, then it becomes so much simpler to jump into Google and find those right opportunities. So clearly you're in the right spot, because that's what this event is all about, is starting to get you to think a little differently, to connect you with resources. Check out the Expo. There's lots of really, really great things that are out there as well. But there's lots of stuff that you can be thinking of. So we have to think outside of the box. So what happens when people think gap year? Initially, they think 3 things: work, volunteer, travel. And that's kind of where their brain kind of stops. And given the pandemic situation, travel can be a little questionable, depending on your risk profile. So then we're just down to working and volunteering if we're staying in that box. And I'm going to encourage you to step outside of that box, because there is so much more out there. So working is definitely something. Starting your own business or dabbling in entrepreneurship is a fantastic way to spend your gap year. We have somebody right now in the Gap Year Game Plan, which is our year-long support program. She started a vegan bakery as part of her gap year, and very quickly learned entrepreneurship was not for her, which is valid. We have people that have sold jewelry. We have people who have done childcare. So you don't have to start like a Fortune 500 company or be heavily invested in like tech startups. It can be something very, very simple, but it's a great way to build confidence, to learn those business skills, and to maybe even test out if entrepreneurship is for you, or if you could make a living doing what you think you might be interested in. So that's a great thing to think about. Domestic travel and volunteering, always possible. So we sometimes project that, oh, my gap year needs to be abroad. It needs to be sexy. I need to be heading to Europe or Africa or wherever you might want to go. But there is so much happening right here within the borders of our own country. And as we don't know what's happening with the pandemic, there are so many things that you can do even here. Head up to Churchill, Manitoba and see the polar bears. Head out to Vancouver and experience what life is like out there, or the Maritimes. Head up to the Yukon, see the Northern Lights. All of these things are really, really, really possible. And I think sometimes we feel we need to go abroad to do those things, and there's so much happening here at home. Other things you can do that are quite common is learning a language, exploring the skilled trades. I think this is really cool because there are fun projects you can do on your gap year. I had somebody once buy a beat up old car, and they spent their gap year tinkering and fixing it up and getting it roadworthy. And then in the springtime of their gap year, they took it on a road trip. So what a sense of accomplishment to be able to take something that's not functioning to something that's going to carry you across the country. I've had people that have finished their basement to make make their own suite. So if they knew they weren't going to be moving out for university, but they wanted a little bit more privacy, or they wanted a little bit of a bigger space, they actually worked with their parents to set something up in the basement, and they worked with contractors. They worked on a budget. They thought about where they needed the outlets to plug in their phone and their computer. They had to decorate it. So there's so many things in there within the trades that are really, really tangible and valuable real world experience. Volunteering, internships, working abroad, even if that's something that interests you, we've got a session coming up specifically for that at 3:30. So in just 12 minutes, there's a session on working abroad. How do you get that visa? What does that look like? The folks at IEC will help you out with that in just a second. And then social justice and leadership opportunities. If you are at all interested in any of the incredibly serious things that are happening out there right now, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's the climate crisis, whether it's the landslides and flooding in BC, whether it's the land back movement, anti-Asian racism, missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. There's so many things that you could dedicate your time and energy into supporting in a really, really substantial way on your gap year. So I hope that gave you a couple of pieces of inspiration, but we're only on step 2. So let's jump on to step 3. Step 3 is to build in systems to keep you on track. And I think that this needs to be central to your gap year planning, because the reality is you're coming from a system where a bell literally rings and tells you where you need to be at what time. And then you're going into a place that is just open space. And that is very, very overwhelming. It can also be really discouraging because we don't have that same outside source saying you're doing a good job, you've done it, congrats. That can be really, really intimidating and can feel very, very overwhelming. So building in those systems to keep you on track is really, really important. This is kind of a side note. Okay, but building systems to keep you on track. So there's a couple ways you can do this. You can do this with a mentor. So finding somebody who you're going to check in with, maybe it's once a month, maybe it's once a week, maybe it's once a day, whatever you need. But finding a mentor is a really, really great way to do that. Also setting milestones along the way. If I complete this online course, then I will make a purchase. Or if I earn X number of dollars on my gap year, then I will be able to afford school. So setting those particular goals and milestones along the way will help you to feel like you are moving forward and help keep you motivated to being moved forward. And this is one of the reasons why we have the gap year game plan, actually, is to help people with that sense of tracking progress, tracking time, tracking growth over the course of your gap year. And if you want to learn more about that, head over to the Expo. There's an entire booth on that there. Lots of information on how to help stay accountable over the course of your gap year. So check that out. Now, I'm going to sneak in a 3B here for you and talk about budget. And again, if this is important to you, come back for our budgeting session. There will be a session on that a little bit later on, and lots of in-depth stuff here. But I want you to really think about investing in yourself. Your gap year doesn't have to cost you hundreds, thousands of dollars, or even tens of thousands of dollars, or even $1,000. Your gap year you can actually earn money on your gap year. But I want you to think about that this year is a year of learning and growth for you. So I want you to actually factor that into everything that you do when you're planning and thinking about your gap year. We sometimes get uncomfortable with the idea of spending money on ourselves or investing in ourselves. But the reality is that you and or your parents have been doing that your entire life. Whether it was paying for soccer or music lessons or Kumon or driving lessons, any of those things cost money, but they were an investment in yourself. You learned some skills, you had some experiences, and the way that the world works is that there's just dollar signs attached to those things. And it's not good or bad, it just is. So I want you to be comfortable with that. Now, when I say that $92,000 reality check, that's how much 4 years of university costs on average in Canada. And the reason I put that up there is because your gap year is a great way to explore and make sure you're heading into the right program. So by spending a couple of $1,000s on your gap year and getting clarity, making sure you're making the best steps for your future, you can actually save yourself tons of money, and it will pay dividends in the long run by doing it right the first time. Instead of heading right into school, changing programs 3 times, extending the number of semesters you're enrolled and therefore the amount of tuition you're paying, you can get it right or closer to right the first time. And that's really the value of a gap year. So that's a little piece of information there, but I want to make sure we get through secret number 4. It's really all about balance. And I think that that's really important to know that your gap year doesn't have to all be strategy and achievement and checking all those boxes and validating that you've made good use of your time. When you go back to step number 1 or secret number 1 in those goals, if your goal is to take care of your mental health, to rest, to relax, to recuperate, to be in a healthy state to take on the next part of your life, then sitting down for a day reading a book or learning how to knit or bake a pie or whatever it is doesn't necessarily fall into the productive category that we all are pushing ourselves towards, but it is helping you achieve your goals. So making sure that when you have those balanced goals, you're creating a structure for your gap year that is going to incorporate something about your future, but it's also going to help you to achieve those personal goals and those fun goals that you set out for yourself. So give yourself a little bit of grace. Think about that balance. Think about, am I doing something social? Am I doing something that is going to get me connected with my peers who are on a gap year? Am I doing something that's going to give me clarity for my future? Am I doing something that's restorative for me? All of those different factors are going to play into a really, really successful gap year. So again, here is some more ideas of things that you can do on your gap year. Some of them are repetitive from the last time, but I really, really want to just hammer home how many different things you could possibly do on your gap year. So just so many ideas here in this session. So I want to make sure that I leave a couple of minutes for your questions, but those are the top 4 secrets that I've got for you for planning your gap year. So goals over Google, number 1, big asterisk, big star. Number 2, then you got to do your research. You got to work at it. Number 3 is that importance of motivation and keeping yourself on track. What are those things that you're going to build into your year that will give you those milestones? And then what should you do to balance your year to make sure you're getting a little of everything that you wanted? So there's a summary of those 4 things. Now, in order to have a successful gap year, you're going to have to spend some time and energy figuring it out. So this half hour with me is a great start, but your successful gap year is worth more than just this time together today. So you guys are starting out on the right foot, and there's tons of resources here for you. So poke around, check it out. We got you on our mailing list now, so we can send you more resources. Check out the podcast, check out all those things that are out there and available to you. So stay tuned to the emails. Make sure they're not going to your junk folder, but you will be getting and hearing lots more from us so that we can support you on that journey. Now, in the next 4 minutes, I'd love to answer your questions. So pop into the chat. Let me know what questions you do have about gap years in general, or about anything else that you may be wondering about the gap year while you've got me here, waiting to answer those questions for you. So let me know in the chat what you've got. What are your questions? You guys are a quiet bunch today. Must be close to midterms and the holidays are approaching. So sometimes I get questions about, Drew, good question. How do you find a mentor? This is something that you can really figure out how you want to do this. A lot of it is through people that you know. So reaching out to your own network, talking to your parents and their friends. What do they know? What can they tell you? And thinking about what type of mentor do you want? Are you looking for a career mentor? Are you looking for a relationship mentor? Are you looking for a spiritual mentor? And then figuring out where might you find those people. And the easiest way is through your personal networks. But then don't hesitate to reach out to somebody for a one-time conversation through LinkedIn, and then invite them to stay on longer for a mentoring relationship if that conversation goes really well. So those are a couple ideas of how to do that. Where can we look for scholarships for travel? Great question. A lot of them have been put on hold at the moment. Come back to the budgeting session. I'm going to be going over a couple of them. The ones that do exist, there is the Youth Travel Foundation. It's a Canadian organization through Hosteling International. It's their charitable arm. They offer scholarships for that. Also, the Travel Access Project. They offer giant scholarships for travel. So that would be another one you could check out, as well as the RBC Future Launch Scholarship. Those are the three main ones that you can find, but also asking for financial aid from any of the travel programs that exist out there. They often have lots of money that goes unclaimed because people aren't asking if there is any financial assistance available. So if you do find yourself in a position of financial need, a lot of them have ways to make it more accessible for you. So that can be helpful for you. Thanks, Mary. Jessica, scholarship for a gap year, does that apply to multiple programs, or how does it change? So Jessica, it depends on what you want to do. So if you're signing up for a specific program, they often have internal scholarships that they can award to individuals. The three that I just mentioned are kind of universal, so they're for travel. The RBC Future Launch could be used to be put towards courses or equipment purchases. Like if you wanted to be a photographer, you could buy a new camera with that, something like that. So hopefully that answers your question, Jessica. AG, I'm on a gap year right now, but feeling like a burden to my parents. Yeah, I don't know, to feel a bit better. It's been hard since my friends are at school, for sure. Yeah, so I think that's really, really great to think about that. Those conversations with your parents are so important, and you're never going to be a really heavy burden on your parents. They love you and they want what's best for you, but that FOMO or that loneliness is really, really something that's important. So I'm not sure if Jazz is still here, but yeah, there you go. We're on the same page. The Gapper Connect portal. So we have a Discord server for people on gap years or people considering a gap year. So if this is you, jump in that Discord server, people are getting together with accountability groups. They're planning different events. They're planning meetups, all sorts of really fun things happening in there. So that's a really great place to start to connect with others. So that would be a great resource for you. And thank you, Ali, for the Go the Distance program by Youth Rising Above. Really great resource. Also, Mentorship Canada has a digital portal for finding mentors as well. So you can check that out.